So, hello, comrades. Give me one moment. I will give me. I will make publicity. Okay, so I think that we can start. It will be the lecture, the conversation about the complicated relations between Poland and Ukraine nation. I am recording this video 29 of the January. It is the very important subject now, the relations between Ukraine and Russia, relations between Russia and USA, between Russia and NATO. And as you probably know, there is a great big possibility of war. And unfortunately, the President Duda, declared that in the time of war, the Poland and will support Ukraine. So Polish President Andrzej Duda, Polish Prime Minister Morawiecki, and also two days ago, no, three days ago, the Polish Parliament, they decided that in the time of war, Poland will support Ukraine. I don't know what does it mean. What does it mean, this solidarity? Because they didn't said. But of course, it is very. I am against it. I am against it for many reasons. First of all, I am against because I am in the circumstance age. I have 39 years old, and me and my brother and my comrades in the time of war, we can be. They could ask us to go to the army and go to war against Russia, and of course, I don't want it. I don't want to fight for defending the Ukrainian fascist state. I am not supporting NATO. I am not supporting also the Polish bourgeois state. So it is first reason that in the time of I am against of war because I can be a participant of this war. The second reason, also very important, if the Poland will declare war to Russia in solidarity with Ukraine, it will be very dangerous for Poland because, as probably you know, there is a small area in the north of Poland. Its name is Kaliningrad region, and you can find there a missile, a lot of missile, which in few minutes this missile can destroy all the cities in Poland. Especially these missiles in Kaliningrad region can destroy my city, Warsaw, capital of Poland, and it will be very, very big tragedy. And the specialists say that in the time of war against NATO, the role of the mission of Poles and Lithuanians is attacked Russian in this Kaliningrad region. So if they defend themselves, they will attack with missiles and they will kill a lot of Polish people. It will be presentation about the history of the relations between Poland and Ukraine nation, and this presentation is addressed especially for the people from USA and from other part of the world who don't really know the situation in Eastern Europe. But I think that my comrades from Poland also can learn something. So to starting, here you can find the picture. It is legendary picture of three knights, as you see, and it is the legend of the about three brothers. The name is Lech, Czech, Rus, and this legend speaks about the origin of the Slavic nation. Origin of the Slavic nation, because all the nations which are using the Slav languages, they have one origin. Uh, so as you see here, you can find the three kind of the Slavic nations. The green one, it is the Slavs from the from the east. So the most important here are Russian and Ukrainian. In the west, in the color blue, you can find the Western Slavic nation. It is Polish, Slovak, and Czech. And in the south, there are the Bulgaria and the nations of ex-Yugoslavia. But these nations, their languages, Slavic languages, are there are also many smaller languages, which is one of which are belonging to one of this family. So, for example, in only in Poland you can find the language of the Silesia region or the language of the Kashubian region. In Germany, there is also two kind of the Slavic nations. It is in the not far from the Bautzen city. So there is the Dolny Łużycki and Górny Łużycki. So I will not present it. You can find this. So here you have the most important Slavic languages. And the first big difference between these languages is that the nations which are Christianized from the Byzantium, from the Constantinople, they are using the alphabet which is similar to the Greek alphabet. It is Cyrillic alphabet, and in Cyrillic alphabet, is used in the Russia, Ukraine, in Belarus, in Serbia, also in Montenegro. What else? I think that's all. So this is the first big difference when you see the Slavic languages, that we have the difference of the alphabet, but this difference is the phonetic of this language are very similar. I am speaking about this because the Ukraine, which is the history of the Slavic nation, it is a little legendary. So if when I was student of history, it was 15 years ago. Most of these things was the legend. So nobody knew what is the origin of the Slavic nation. We have only the theory, but the most historians said that the origin of the Slavic nation, it is the border between Poland and Ukraine and Belarus. It was the origin of the Slavic language. So it is very important. Maybe I will, as you see Here in the middle, between the border of Poland and border of Ukraine, it's very probable that the Slavic language was born there. And after it became very important family of the languages, because Slavic language, because of Russian language, is very important. You can speak also in Russia, in Asia, in Vladivostok, in Central Asia, in Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, etc. Okay. So, so first thing which I want to say about Ukraine is to understand that Ukraine today is one of the poorest state in the Europe, and one of the poorest state in the world. After the counter-revolution, after the fall of the Soviet Union, Ukraine became a very poor country. And the demographic in the 1991, the demography of the Ukrainian Socialist Republic was 51 million people. Now is 10 million less officially, but not officially. It's 35, 37 million people who lived in Ukraine because of many reasons. One of these reasons is emigration toward Russia, emigration toward European Union or United States and Canada. The second reason is the people are now living in the is poverty. Oh, I can read the comment. Macedonian is a dialect of Bulgarian, Serbian, Croatian, and Bosnian are the same language. Okay, I would like to say that I am not expert about this Slavic question. I only introduced this Slavic question to present that the origin of the Ukrainian nation and Polish nation is similar. There was a time when the Polish and Ukrainian can very easy communicate without any problems. It was one language. One language. Its name. It's old Slavic language, or something like this. And this history, this picture which I show him, it's a legend about three brothers, and these brothers I decided to split, and one of these brother, Lech, became first king of Poland, or first the Duke of Poland. Czech became first you can understand, king of the Czech Republic, and Rus is go to the Russia or Ukraine. Because when we talk about Middle Ages, there was not Russia, it was Rush. In Polish language, it is Rush, and I will explain it after. It's not bad that we don't have in this legend the history of the Yugoslav nation, Slavic from the south, but not important. Okay, so why I am saying this? So first thing which I want to say, that in Middle Ages, I think that maybe in 9th or 10th century, the Ukraine, which is now the poorest country in the Europe, it was not like this. In 10th century, Ukraine was one of the most civilized region in the Europe. The west of Europe, it was the time of the Middle Ages. and it was before the creation of capitalist system there. In this time in Poland, we didn't have cities in Poland in 10th century. The first cities in Poland, real cities, was created in Poland in 13th century. It was because of the colonization of the people from the West. We have the thing which is known the colonization in the German law, and many people, the colons from Germany or the Western Europe, came to Poland to create the villages in Poland and create the cities in Poland. So in 10th or 11th century in Poland, we don't have city. In Poland, we have some castles and we have a lot of forest, and that's all. In this time, Ukraine, the land of Ukraine today, was very developed. So it was the land. First things which you have, which you need to understand the history of the Ukraine, which is very important up till to now, is that Ukraine is very good place for living because of the climate, because of the agriculture, possibility to make agriculture, and it was always be a good place for living. So if you want to compare, for example, the demography of France and demography of Sweden, we have two countries which is the same, the mm, the the how to say, the kilometers of this country are similar, but France is much more populated than Sweden because of the climate. That climate in France is better for living than climate in Sweden. And this climate in Ukraine especially is good, especially for the agriculture. So it is first thing important to Ukraine. Second thing is trade. Is trade. There was the cities in the Black Sea coast, and these cities in this Black Sea coast existed from the time of the colonization of Greek. So there was very old tradition to create the trade cities in the coast of the Black Sea. And the cities like Odessa and other cities like this were populated by the people from all the nations of Europe. We can find there Italian, Greeks, Ormian, Poles, Jews, Ukrainian, Russian, and so it was the multinational cities and rich cities. Okay, so these things you have to understand that in the 10th and 11th century, the Ukraine, the land of the Ukraine today was the one of the best place for living in Europe in this time. So here you can find that this land, which are the which we the name is Rush, was divided for the some of the small kingdoms, and but so it was the feudal rivalry between these kingdoms, but it was the same language, the same culture, and the same religion. And one of the first things which divided the Poles and Ukrainian are the question of the religion. That Poles were Christianized by the Christian Catholic Church from the Rome, and the Russia, Ukraine, and after Russia, in Kyiv was Christianized by the Orthodox Church, and it was something which created animosity between the Poles and Ukrainian, because it was a clash of the civilization. That all this animosity between the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church in the border of Poland, it was here where, when the Pope have problem with Orthodox Church, it's Poles. He used Poles against Ukrainian and stuff like this. Here I think that we have there is the commentary of Jotazet to the actual situation, but I will read it after. I will continue the history. Okay, so now this is the history of the Polish kingdom. Here is the king of Bolesław Chrobry. He was the first colonized king of Poland, and in 1018 he conquered the Kyiv. So the Polish army go there and of course kill people and take a lot of things. And when he come back to Poland, they some of this place in the yellow, it was belonging after to Poland. So it was one of the first war between Poles and the Ukrainians, and these wars between our nations, our states, are after very, very often. So everything changed in 13th century because of the invasion of Mongols. Until 13th century, you have to understand that the center of the Slavic culture, Slavic language, was Ukraine. It was a center. After the invasion of the Mongols, it changed. It changed because Mongols, they invaded especially Russia. Also, there was troops, Mongols, who came to Poland, came to Hungary, but they don't occupied Poland and they don't occupied Hungary. So Mongols occupied Russia more than 2 centuries. More than 2 centuries, all the Russian people were occupied by the Mongols. There are some kingdoms in the north of Russia which are not aren't occupied by the Russia, by the Mongols, but it is another history. I think I see that there are a lot of idiots here, so I need to block them. But the most important cities like Moscow or Kyiv was occupied. What it was not occupation, but they need to pay to Mongols to live. If they don't pay, Mongols can come in every moment and do what they wanted. And it was the moment when the Poles, which are the less civilized, less developed in the economic and in many things, starting to be more, they developed more than Ukraine, because for Ukraine it was a big tragedy. It was big tragedy, and this tragedy is until today. We can say that until today we have a lot of problem in Ukraine because of this invasion of Mongols and the occupation of the Ukraine by the Mongols. So you can read this. So it was they captured Kiev in 1241. So now I jump to 14th century. Because in 14th century the Poland started to make uh, how to say slowest but very efficacious expansion to the east, and they starting to capture this land which before was the land of Ukraine. So first guy which we need to mention here is this guy. It is the king of Poland, Kazimierz Wielki, Kazimierz the Great. And as you see, this red territory, it is a territory which he have in the beginning, and but in the finish he doubled the territory of Poland, and especially he doubled the territory of Poland in direction of east. So it was a time when one of the most important city for our history, the city of Lwów, starting to be a Polish city, and it was a Polish city until 1949. So it was the Polish city, how to more than 700 years. But the most important things for the Polish expansion to the east is the creation of the new state which didn't existed before, the state of the Lithuania. Lithuania was a pagan state which very quickly they conquer the land of the Russians. They conquered the land of the Russians, and they conquered the land dominated by the Orthodox Church. But the Lithuania was not Orthodox, was not Christian. They are pagans. So they very quickly created a very, very big state. As you see, this state is very, very big. Here you can find that in this state now we have the part of Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Belarus, Ukraine, Russia, Poland. So it was very, very huge. And for Poland, it was very big, good deal because Poland make a union with this state. And because Poland was more developed from the in the cultural level, linguistic level, economic level, military level, and stuff like this, the Poles are starting to make the Polish nation starting to colonize this big territory, especially the territory of Ukraine. And we have the two phenomena. One of this phenomenon, it is colonization, that the Poles go there from Poland to Ukraine. And second phenomenon, also very important, is the Polonization of the allies of the Ukraine, of this region. So the nobles starting to speak Polish language, and also they starting to become Catholic. So as you see, now we have this history of this union was, of course, it is very complicated history. So I will not speak about all these history of this Polish-Lithuanian state. But one thing you have to understand: after the Unia Lubelska, after 1569, the Ukraine was incorporated to Poland, because it was the union of two states, Poland and Lithuania. But in the beginning, Ukraine was a part of the Lithuania. After this union, Poles are taken Ukraine, and it was incorporated to Poland. So it is how Poles became ruling on Ukraine. It was not because of the military conquest or war. It was because of the diplomatic, economic, and stuff like this, that the Poles were more important in this union, and they profit. So so in the from these times, we have it's starting very complicated relations between Polish nation and Ukrainian nation, because Poles wanted to use Ukraine like something like Polish colonies. And we need to say that for many bad things which was happened there, of course, the most responsible for this was Poles, but it was the creation of the Western capitalism system which is also responsible for this, because the Poland was country which exported resources to Netherlands, to England, and they export these resources. Especially, they export resources from Ukraine. So they export the agricultural stuff, and it was very important. This export from Baltic, from city of Gdańsk to west, was very important to the creation of development of capitalist system in the Western countries, because in this time in Western countries we have a situation when they stopped to produce the agricultural things. You can read the Capital Volume 1 of Karl Marx, and you have the history how the agricultural land in England was they changed the role of this land. This land before produced the agricultural things, and after they starting to make animals like how is name sheep. So they introduce a big place for the sheep, shepherd, and they kicked out the peasants from this territory to the cities and to factories. So it is this history. Okay. So of course, when when Polish nobles starting to introduce the colonial activity in Ukraine, especially here in this red square, it is the place where very often where the insurrection of the Cossacks. So then, when they introduced this colonial system, there was very often the insurrection of Cossacks. And maybe now I say a few words who was a Cossacks, because it's very important to understand. Maybe firstly we can look for the map. So as you see, this territory, Ukraine, starting to be a place of the clash of the civilization. We have four civilizations here. One, of course, it is the Western Catholic civilization represented by Poles. But it is not a question of the religion. It is the question that the Poles have a diplomatic contact with the Western countries because of the similarity of the alphabet and stuff like this. Second civilization was Russia and Orthodox. Third civilization was Tatars. And four was Turkey and Islam. So there was a lot of tension between Poles and Russians, Poles and Turks, Poles and Tatars, and very often Poles are used the Cossacks. Cossacks. This was a guy who were not peasants, who they escaped from the peasantry. They escaped from land, and they became like a brigands, rebels. They create they own army. And this army sometimes collaborated with Poles, sometimes collaborated with Russian, sometimes they collaborated with Turkey and with Tatars. So they were not loyal for anybody. But the most of them wanted to collaborate with Poles. They wanted to collaborate with Poles, and for example, this guy, the most important, Bogdan Khmelnytsky, he was a hetman of this army, and he represented Polish state there. But he made insurrection against Poland. But we have a lot of these insurrections. We have a few insurrections which were very, very big, but also a lot of insurrections which are very small. So this is this Cossacks, and this is the guy who is also, he looks like a Cossack, but he was the guy from Ukraine who and he became Pole. And it is very, very, very often to history of the colonial nation that the elites of the colonial nation, they became traitors of this nation, and they wanted to collaborate with the occupy empire than their own nation. The son of this guy became after the king of Poland, and this guy killed a lot of Cossacks, a lot of Ukrainians. Jeremy Wiśniowiecki. So the Poland were very cruel to all kind of the rebellion. It is I think that it is one of the cruel punishment which we can imagine. And so it is they are killing the guy to make him to the tree which is very edge. It's like this, and they put him this tree to his ass. So it's very, very bad death. The Poles in 17th century, the finish of the 16th century and in the 17th century are responsible for killing a lot of people there. And if we want to understand the relations between Polish nation and Ukrainian nation today, we need to understand that from the historic perspective, the Ukrainian never, the Polish people never the Polish state never apologized for this mass murder, because it was something like mass murder, that after all insurrection the Poles killed a lot of people. And they, for killing one Pole, they could kill all the men in the village. It was like this. So it is the Polish army force. It's named Husaria, and it was a time when the Poland was military superior than Ukraine. Poles are used the it was combined two kind of making war. One thing was using the war typical for the big territories, so they are using horses, but also they are using, the Polish army used all this military stuff from the Western countries. So in 17th century, the Polish army were very efficacious, and many battles were won by the Poles. Today, the Polish nationalists very often they said that we are the babies of Husaria. So if you want to know more about this history, about the Cossacks insurrection in the time of the occupation of Ukraine by the Polish nobles, you can find information in the books or in the movies from Russian perspective. So you can it is Taras Bulba. In this history, it is the history of the Cossack, and of course the Poles in this book are very ugly person. So Poles made their own version of history, and it is the Ogniem i Mieczem, the book and the movie Ogniem i Mieczem. It is the same history written from Polish perspective, and in this perspective, the Poles are the heroes and very good guys, and the Cossacks are the ugly one. This it's like a Western. It's like a Western. In the Western made in the USA, you have the presentation of the Native Americans, the Indians in USA, like criminals and a very aggressive person. And in this movie, there is the same. So I think that if you have time, you can read or watch two these movies to see how it's this the one history is totally different when this history is written by Paul or written in Ukraine. It is and it is the problem that we don't have one version of history. From Polish, this history in 17th century, it is history that we are spreading the civilization, we are spreading the good things, blah blah blah. And from Ukrainian perspective, it was very bad history. Okay, this history of the Polish state is finished in 1795, and as you see, the Poland was divided for three countries. For the Prussia, Prussia, which after became a Germany, for the Autriche, and for the Russia. And for this video, is important that the Ukraine now is divided for two countries. Is divided for the Russian and the Autriche Empire. And it is very important because this division which you can see here, is division which exists until today in the Ukrainian, that the east of the Ukrainian state is dominated by the people who speak Russian, and the west of the Ukrainian, this part which was occupied by the Autrish, it's part of the Ukrainian native language. Um, and this history of the relation between Autrish and Russia is very important to creation of the Ukrainian languages, because you need to understand that maybe I will return. I will return for here that in this time in Middle Ages, all this part, the Moscow, the Novgorod, the Kiev, they speak the same language, they have the same religion, and it was one nation, we can say. And it is not only one nation. This nation was created in Kiev. So the Kiev was the first capital of this nation. But after the partition, this now it is divided. Of course, it was already divided in the time of the existing of Poland, because Poles wanted to divide these nations. They tried to introduce the Catholic religion in the Ukraine, and also they introduced the new religion. New religion, it is how to say, Greco-Katolicki. It is that we have the Orthodox in the form, but they are listening not the guy from the Constantinople, but they are listening the Jesuits, and they are listening the Pope. So this division between the Orthodox and between the Russians from the place which are governed by Poles, and the Russians from the Moscow, it's starting earlier, but it's here when we have the creation of the modern Ukrainian nation. And this modern Ukrainian nation is born in Autrish, in the Autrish Empire. It was after the events of the war between Autrish and the Hungary, when the Russian came to Autrish to help the Habsburg to killing the Hungary Revolution. So they came there, they killed the Hungary Revolution, but the Austrian Empire, they understand that the Russian soldiers and the peasants from the Ukraine are speaking the same language. They say a lot of customs the same, and then they wanted to divide these nations. So the Austrian were very interested to create a new language, new Ukrainian language. Of course, the difference between the dialects existed before, but they pushed this difference in the dialects to create a new language. And it was against Russian in one side, Russian Empire, but also against the Poles who lived in the same territory. Okay, so now we can start the after in 1918. We have a very complicated history of the Ukraine. This history is started after the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk. Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, and because of the one idiot whose name is Lev Trotsky, who didn't wanted to sign a treaty with Germany, the Ukraine started to be occupied by the Germans, and Germans are created the Ukrainian state there. So Ukrainian state was created before Polish state, and of course the new Polish state and new Ukrainian states wanted to have Lvov in their side. So we have the first military confrontation between Poles and the Ukrainians in the Lvov in the November 1980. Here is very important cemetery in Lvov. It is cemetery, Wyczakowski cemetery, where very often you can find the swastikas and other graffitis made regularly by the Ukrainian neo-Nazis. They go there and they wrote there the fuck Polish people and stuff like this. It's in Lvov. It is the cemetery for the Polish guys who were fighting against Ukrainian in 1918. This guy, here we have two guys that maybe before I will say here, I say about this guy. That in Ukraine in this time in 1918 1919 we have a lot of forces. We have the Bolsheviks and the Red Army. We have the White Army. We have the anarchists. This guy is the leader of the anarchists, Nestor Makhno. So every these forces wanted to take Ukraine for them. We have this small Ukrainian state, and the leader of this state, if this guy is Simon Petlura, and we have Poles. So we have five forces, and every of these forces, Bolsheviks, White Army, anarchists, Ukrainian nationalists, and Poles wanted to take Ukraine. So the Ukrainian state of Petlura, which firstly was an enemy of the Polish state in the 1920, with Polish state they attacked Bolsheviks in Kiev. There is somebody who are laughing about my languages skills, but I don't care. Okay, so now we have the Polish state after 1921. It is the minorities in Poland, and as you see in the in the place of Ukraine today, the majority of the majority nation is the Ukrainian. But the Poles are living in Lvov and some other of big cities. So it is how many people lived in this Polish state. The Poles was 69%, and the Ukrainians was 14%. It was 14% in this whole state, but in this territory, the Ukrainians were majority. Okay, and now we start to speak about very ugly situation. It was now we jump to the history of the Second World War, and these things which I said about this about the 17th century when Poles killed a lot of Ukrainians or Cossacks or peasants who rebelled against Polish nobles. So the Wołyń, it is something like vengeance. Vengeance, the Ukrainian nationalists, they killed it started 11 July 1943. They knew that soon the Red Army will came, so they wanted to, before Red Army came, they wanted to make ethnic cleansing and killed all people, all Polish people who lived there. So it is very tragic history, because it was not ethnic cleansing making by the regular army. Normally, this ethnic cleansing making by the regular army, it is something which is of course very cruel, but we have some kind of order there. Like the ethnic cleansing making by Germans, they concentrated people in the ghetto. After they moved these people for the Auschwitz, and after they killed them. The Boeing Massacre, it was something different. It was massacre organized by the guerrillas, the Ukrainian nationalist organization UPA, and these nationalists, they pushed Ukrainian people who live there to participate in this mass murder. So every guy in Ukraine have to choose. He go with UPA to kill the Poles, or he don't want to kill Poles, and UPA will kill him. So they killed more than 100,000 people. They killed, of course, especially Poles, but also they killed Ukrainians, which are in the marriage or question. They live together with Poles, they defend Poles, so they killed a lot of people. Guy who was a leader of this organization is Stefan Bandera. He is the legendary guy because he was he was in prison in Germany and he died there. So he was one of the leader of this. He is like a hero from them. And today this guy is celebrated in Ukraine. Here is the cemetery of the SS Galician. As you see today, the nationalists in Ukraine, they are demonstrating with the images of Bandera. And for Polish people, this is something very, very unacceptable. The situation when the guy who is responsible for the mass killing of Polish people, he is a real hero to the to the Ukrainian today. As you see here, you have the monument of Bandera, and this monument was built now. It's not that it was building now, and now when we have the official diplomatic relations between president of Poland and president in Ukraine, so they shake hand, and after Zelensky go to Ukraine to build another monument of Bandera. So it's very, very strange situation from Polish perspective. It is unacceptable situation, but nobody care in Poland. Okay, here is the demonstration of the Ukrainian nationalists, and this symbol here, it is the Ukrainian version of swastika. As you see, another demonstration with Bandera. Here we have this Azov battalion, Azov battalion, and we have the three symbols, which all these symbols are. I don't know which symbols are was is the worst one. In the left we have the flag of NATO, North Atlantic Terrorist Organization. In the right, we have the flag of the Third Reich, and in the middle, we have the flag of the Battalion Azov. This guy, it is the military equipment, and they are formed, trained in USA. Most of these guys are trained in USA or they are trained in Ukraine, but with collaboration with the US Army or the CIA. So, and it's this Azov battalion is one of the most important force for fighting in the Donbas region today. And as you see, this force, which is supported by all the Polish parties, the leftist parties from the Western Europe, they said we need to defend Ukrainians, and this is the fighters for the democracy. This is the fighters from the freedom. Here you can find these fighters for the freedom with swastika, with Zikhai, and stuff like this. So it is one of the reasons why I don't want to participate in this war against Russia, because it is not my war. The enemy of the Polish people are these neo-Nazis, which are here in this photo. And here you can find the history of the SS Galician. SS Galician was a collaboration force in the time of the Second World War, because the Germans decided to use the Ukrainians against Soviet Union. Now I will stop a little to speak something about this in tradition of the Ukrainian nationalism, because we need to understand the tragedy of this nation. That some leftists can say that nationalism is always bad. I am not agree with this. It's not that nationalism is always bad, and we can find a lot of example when the nationalism is the revolutionary force which push the revolution to the socialism. The best example, of course, is the Cuban Revolution, but also Chinese Revolution, Vietnamese Revolution, the revolution in Eastern Europe, especially in Poland after Second World War. So it is not like this that nationalism it's always bad. That now we have the difference between Polish nationalism and Ukrainian nationalism. Polish nationalism in the 19th century, when the Poles who fighting for independent Poland, they were supported by the European communist movement, especially by the Karl Marx. So we can find a lot of speeches, a lot of articles of Karl Marx, who supported to fight of the Poles for the independence. So we can say that the Polish nationalism in the 19th century was a leftist nationalism, was progressive. Unfortunately, the history of Ukraine is different. The Ukraine don't have history of the progressive nationalism. Maybe there is some history in the Socialist Republic of Ukraine. I don't know. Maybe yes, but the most important patriotic idea which is now propagated in Ukraine. It is the propagation of these Nazi collaborators which collaborate with the Germany in the time of the Second World War. And it is tragic history because in one side, I think that every nation have a right to independence. And of course, Ukrainians have right to independence. But in second side, this movement which existed in Ukraine in the time of the Second World War and which exists until today is a reactionary nationalist movement which want to copy this version of ethnic nationalism created by Hitler. So this is our state, and in this state we need to kill all the people who are not the Ukrainians. It is the logic of the Boeing Massacre. We need to clean this land from Poles. And the history of the Odessa in 2014 is the same history. So that this is the Russian in Odessa. So they kill them. We need to make fire in the building where are more than 40 persons and kill them there. So it is nationalism which continue this history of Nazism. Here in this photo, you have the photo of the veterans which are demonstrating today. It is the veterans from the SS Galician and another organization who collaborated with Third Reich. I don't understand. I really don't understand how it is possible that these people in the time of Soviet Union they survive. I can imagine. And everybody said the Soviet Union was a totalitarian society, and in this totalitarian society, the people from the SS Galician survive. I can understand. Comrade Stalin, shame of you that you didn't. This problem with this Nazism, that they make a denazification of East Germany, but they didn't make a denazification of Ukraine. Okay, so now it is here we have a photo of the Akcja Wisła. It is the new border of Poland, border after the Second World War, and now we have socialist Poland. Socialist Poland. Stalin didn't do a good enough purge. Yes, didn't. If the Nazi collaborators survive in the socialist Ukraine, I didn't understand why. These problems between Ukrainians and the Poles existed in all the history of Poland between 1918 and 1949, because Poles and Ukrainians are living in the same territory, and every nation wanted to be the majority in this place. So the Poles, after the socialist Poland, decided to move these people to another part of Poland. So some of these guys were sent to the western Poland, some of them were sending to the north of the Poland, and some of them were sending to the northwest part of the Poland. And the politic was like this, that they finish with this big concentration of the Ukrainians. So Ukrainians were pushed to migration with a ban to return in, I don't know, 50 years or something like this. Um, and the guerrillas of UPA, when they were captured, they were not killed, but they were pushed to emigration in Poland, from one part of Poland to second part of Poland, and so Poles didn't respond for this ethnic cleansing, because some Poles wanted to make vengeance. They killed Poles because they are Poles, so we now killed Ukrainians because we are Ukrainians. And if the Poland after Second World War will be a Poland of the reactionary forces, I think that they will be make eye for eye, and for the killing of Poles, they will kill Ukrainians. The socialist Poland didn't want it to kill these guys, so they pushed them to emigration. And that's all. So now we are living in 2022, and we are living in a very very strange situation when the Polish parliament and Polish state and Polish president, everybody, and Polish media, everybody all the time said, we need to support Ukraine because Ukraine is our friend, and we need to support our friend against Russia. So I record this video to show that um, to present you that in one side, of course, I understand that the Ukrainians, when they are angry against Poles, it is legitimate because of the history. But because now they are celebrated Nazi collaborators, it is shame for Ukraine, and it is shame for all the European Union that they support these Nazi collaborators in Ukraine. And I think that until they didn't stop with this cult of Bandera, UPA, SS Galician, and other forces like this, the most important, that the Poland have to block I don't know. I support to cancel the diplomatic relations between Poland and Ukraine, because it is something very very strange that Poland have relations with Ukrainians, and in the same time Ukrainians are building these monuments against Poles, because it is splitting to our face. And of course, it is important from not only from the Polish perspective, it is important from the communist perspective, because this neo-Nazi nationalism which existed now in Ukraine, it's anti-communist, anti-Sovietic. They destroy the monuments of Lenin, and they are make violence against Communist Party of Ukraine. Okay, so I think that it will be all. If there are some questions, I can answer. If not, we can finish. I will read the comment. Yotazit, from the USA perspective, the best way is to warmonger between Russia and Ukraine with as many millions of civilians casualties as possible. Ukraine is that in that case will be destabilized and US will profit. Russia will not allow it. They have three options. First, they can deploy nuclear power missile in Kaliningrad region. Two, they can deploy nuclear missile in Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua. Three, they can start blitzkrieg in Ukraine and take eastern Ukraine, or the better solution to attack from Belarus and in one strike take Kiev and make a border on Dnieper. From Belarus border is only 17 kilometers to Kiev. The best solution is to take Kiev. For A lot of the in Kilab, a lot of the Nazi collaborators and even SS Galicia moved here to the UK after Second World War, also to Canada and America. And they have streets named after Bandera in Ukraine. Bandera statue still copied Soviet style. Lol, Lenin. Yes, it's it's a copy of the Lenin monument, but has Stalin. Okay, so thank you for participation. Is the last time to ask something. I want to say that I am against war. I want that Poland, if Poland well was a country ruled by the communists today, I will declare, of course, neutrality, and of course I will ban all the military transport from the Polish territory. So we are against to using Polish territory to export the military stuff to Ukraine, because more the military stuff there, the probability of the war is bigger. I am against war, and of course, of course, all this military escalation is only because of the interest of the American military complex. They want to war to sell the weapon. It's always like this. Did hear about Mata drug problems? Yes, of course, but it's not a question for this conversation. Mata is a Polish rapper, hip hop artist. His father is a lawyer who collaborate with the liberal, the most important opposition force. And it's funny that this guy who presents himself like a guy who wants to teach Poles how to live, his son is in prison because of drug. So it's funny. Okay, comrades, thank you for this, and I hope that you are doing a great job. I am going to email you about some of the topics you covered in your videos. What's your email? I will write you my email. Of Michal@gmail.com. It's my email. If somebody wants to collaborate, I invite you. And that's all. If somebody speak Polish language, I think that tomorrow will be the stream when I will answer the question, but it will be in Polish. So thank you, comrades, for listening, and I hope that if you are living in the NATO states, make the action, anti-war action, to call that you are against war. We need to show our medias, our governments, our societies that we are against war with Russia. I am regularly in Ukraine. They removed all the Soviet era statutes, streets names, but they couldn't remove the hammer and sickle on the Mother Ukraine statue in Kyiv. I I have contact with Ukrainians because many Ukrainians are now the truck drivers, and I am unloading these trucks in France. So some of them, but they are divided. Some of them came from the East Ukraine, and this is the Russian speaking guys. Some of them are from western part of Ukraine, and it's very often I can find this Nazi symbol. It's for me, it's a shame. And when I see the truck with the guy who is with the this Nazi symbol of Battalion Azov or stuff like this, normally I speak Russian to help them because they don't speak French. But when I see that it is the collaborator, that it is Ukrainian nationalist, for example, stuff like this. When they say, "Hey, Michel, come here. You need to translate." No. Now have my pause. I will not translate this guy. He will translate. Uh, of course, I don't know. I don't say why, but I don't want to speak with guy like this. In Poland, the only hammer and sickle is in the Kołobrzeg Xylite Tower. Tony Garia, hello. Okay, comrades. So it's the the last time to ask some question. If not, I'm going to my wife. We will watch the movie with Leonardo DiCaprio. Don't look up. But we will start, and I have 22 minutes. But if nobody wants to ask some question, we will finish now. I will wait 10 seconds maybe. I hope that the presentation which I prepare was good. It is a lot of job to organize the presentation like this, but I think that it's easier to understand this complicated subject. Okay, there are not questions, so one more time I repeat, we are against war with Russia, against NATO, against Nazism in Ukraine, and I hope that there will be not war.